Well, I'm Ravi Philemon. To a certain segment of Singaporeans, I'm no stranger. I have been in the public's eyes since at least 2008, talking about various issues. I've been a blogger, not just a blogger, but also involved in activism, community service, and so on and so forth. So I'm no stranger to a certain segment of the Singapore population. I'm 47, and as you can see, I'm a family man. This interview is happening in my house. So typically, in my everyday life is wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, go to work, come back home, have dinner with my family, and then we do stuff. Everything as a family. So. So that's me.
Mr. Philemon, you mentioned about blogger. So you rose to prominence in Singapore's socio-political space as the editor of the Online Citizen. Could you share your thoughts on editing for an online news site in the infancy of the industry and the changes you have observed so far?
I mean, how I started writing for TOC is also very interesting, right? It all started when I came back from the US. And obviously I was working a lot with people who are homeless, and I wrote an article about homelessness in Singapore, a very mild article in fact, saying how you can avoid being homeless, and a minor point in that article was how the government could do a bit more than what it was doing to help the people that were going homeless. It was a different time altogether. People were camping out in the beaches, and they were losing their homes to banks. They couldn't service their mortgage loans and so on and so forth. A significant number, I would say. So I thought that article would be very useful to the readers. And I sent it to a few publications. Most of the mainstream media refused to publish that article, and it was sitting on my desktop for a very, very long time. After a few months, I was doing some spring cleaning, and I looked at this article. I thought, wow, it's a very nicely written article. Why didn't I see if someone would publish it? Then I sent it to. I remembered reading TOC when I was in the US, and I sent it to TOC asking if they would publish it. They did a few days later, and that's how my relationship with TOC started, right? And one thing led to another. I'm not the kind of person who backs down when the task needs to be done. And very soon, people were recognizing me, not so much my face, not so much of they didn't know what I did and so on, but they recognized my name because I have a rather unique name, right? I mean, Ravi Philemon. Ravi is a very common name, and Philemon is a very unusual name. So so I mean, that's how more people got to know me as I was working with TOC. It was very, very challenging and interesting working for TOC because I was part of the team that was covering the G 2011 as well, and how things happen organically. Of course, we do plan for it, but sometimes running IQ, like you can have 1001 backup plans, but nothing ever works the way that you do. So you have to wait for things to start cropping up organically. So it's a very, very interesting experience working with TOC, managing readers' expectations, and coming out boldly to challenge your own reader base with the different editorials and so on and so forth, pushing the issues. Because at that time when I was in charge of TOC is evolving, right? Just like any other I think socio-political website, it has to evolve. When I was heading it, I called it a group site of blogivists, activists with a blog, but it's evolving. It's more an alternative news platform now, not so much of activism now. So which is good. I think any platform is defined by the people that leads them. And when I was leading TOC, that's who I am, right? I'm an activist and I'm a blogger, and so a blogger is, you know.
So how do you think, like, you know, the social media will affect this time's general election?
Well, I really don't know. You know, I have been doing the workabouts in different places, meeting different kinds of people from different walks of life. Yeah, a certain segment do recognize me because there's an online-offline divide, right? And how do you bridge that divide? That is the great challenge. Not just for me, but I think for everyone else, even for people who are in the government, for people who are activists, the bloggers, how do you bridge that divide? So that was what I was hoping to do as a bloggivist as well. I mean, you don't just hide behind a laptop and a keyboard, but you come from behind the screen to interact and mingle with the people. And so I hope to do a bit more of that as a politician.
So yeah, I've read your blog also.
Sure.
Yeah, in a recent blog post, you mentioned that PAP will form the next government, vote opposition without fear. You predicted that PAP will form the government, and therefore citizens can vote for opposition without fear.
Right.
This so-called, you know, defeatist mentality has been subjected to criticisms like over the past few months. Some say that if the opposition aims to be just check and balances, there will never be a change in government. How do you respond to that? Do you think it's possible in your lifetime to have a change in government?
Well, I think I first like to correct that, because it's not a defeatist mentality. It's a reality, right? Because there are many things that are working to the advantage of the PAP government. Like, for example, let's take the constituency that I intend to contest in as well, Hong Kah North, right? A large part of it is Bukit Gombak, but a fairly significant part of the voters come from Jurong West as well. You know, so you have 60 blocks in Bukit Gombak and 30 blocks in 50 blocks in you got 90 blocks in Bukit Gombak and about 50 blocks in Jurong West. If you were to drive from Bukit Gombak to Jurong West, it takes you about 15-20 minutes. If you were to take a public bus to drive from Bukit Gombak to Jurong West, it takes you 15 minutes. Some of the residents that I spoke to didn't even know that Jurong West was part of Hong Kah North. And I mean, vice versa. Some of the residents in Jurong West didn't know that Bukit Gombak was part of their constituency as well. So, what's the purpose of the carving out like that? Is it gerrymandering? Because I mean, we do not know, right? I mean, our election cycle, it's not fixed at certain cycles. The Prime Minister can call for election anytime he wants. So there are many odds that are stacked against the opposition. So when I say that the voters can vote for the opposition without fear, it is bearing in mind the reality of the game, right? So when, but I think that Singaporeans have got to understand. I think Singaporeans already do understand that a strong, credible opposition is good for Singapore, and they have made that known with their votes. And I think going forward, they will continue to do that. You know, I think, in my opinion, I mean, just like what I said about TOC, it's evolving, right? So in the same way, I think opposition in Singapore too will evolve. It's not yet ready to take on, I think it's not yet ready to be the next government. The time will come, probably when it will be. Whether it will be in my lifetime or not, I mean, who knows, right? Who knows, really who knows.
Speaking of challenges, what is like the biggest challenges you have faced so far in your walkabouts and your...
Well, the biggest challenge, like I said, is the distance. You know, I have to, from Bukit Gombak to Jurong West. A distance is a very big challenge. I mean, and of course the campaigning period is only 9 days. And yeah, so these are the two biggest challenges. I enjoy interacting with people. I am a people person. I identify with the challenges, the different circumstances that people live in. I try to imagine. I try to put myself into their shoes, try to find what solutions may be most suitable for them. So I enjoy interacting with people. So there are no issues there. But my only what should I say? My only wish, if I had any, was that the distance, it wouldn't be like so big. Yeah.
Okay, you said in a recent interview that you would champion the disabled cause and the transport issue. Any reason why these two issues?
I think I was misquoted by that newspaper article. What I had said, what the question that was posed to me was, what issues will you champion if you are elected? And I replied that I have spoken up about various issues that affect the welfare and well-being of Singaporeans, and that I have been blogging since 2007, 2008, and have been active on the ground since at about that time. And that I have spoken up about various issues. And the follow-up question was, so what are some of these issues? I said that it's all in my blog, but one of it is transport. I was one of the first to speak up in 2011 when there was a massive breakdown, two massive breakdowns of the SMRT, and I had also spoken up for the people with disability who for transport subsidies for them. But the newspaper article went and reported as if these were the only two issues that I would speak up on. So yeah.
Okay. So what do you think would be the biggest issue this time around during elections?
Well, I think the biggest, the elephant in the room that the PAP refuses to talk about in a roundabout way is the immigration, the 6.9 million population. Some establishment figures are saying that it can be as much as 10 million. So I think that's the issue. That's the issue. There's no other issue than that, because what does a 7 million, 10 million population mean for Singapore, right? Aside from the constraints on land, space, and so on and so forth, it would mean that you would need that much more water, you would need that much more electricity. Where are you going to get all this electricity and water from? Are you going to build a nuclear facility in and around Singapore? If you are, how is that going to affect Singaporeans? And this is not a wild fantasy, right? The government is already spending $60–70 million studying if a nuclear facility would be suitable for Singapore. Some amendments, some legislation and policies have been discussed in Parliament. So it's not a fantasy, wild idea. It's right there on the card. So Singaporeans have got to make a wise decision come election time. Do they trust the PAP enough to give them a blank check? This is a government that we know that once they have decided on something, they'll go ahead and push it through regardless of the opposition there is to the thing that they have decided on. One example is, of course, the casino in the 2004-2005 period. They wanted to bring in casinos. There was widespread opposition to it. Regardless of the opposition, today we have not one but two casinos, right? So, so the challenges for Singaporeans going forward, is huge. And Parliament is the highest office in the land that would have to decide on many of these things. Do the voters trust the PAP enough to give them a blank check in Parliament? The NCMPs and NMPs don't cut it, honestly. They can't vote on matters of, for example, constitution. So you need a sizable opposition in Parliament and send credible people into Parliament.
Okay. But speaking of going back to the immigration issue, a lot of people have been talking about it, and some people ask what solution could there be to this. So in your opinion, how are some of the way we can address this elephant in the room?
Of course, immigration. I'm not anti-immigration. I'm not xenophobic. I have spoken up on issues of immigration and xenophobia, and it's publicly available on my blog. And I think, but there needs to be a better balance of better balance of immigrants and Singaporeans and so on and so forth. What are the solutions? I think we have to think a bit harder on how we can raise our own total fertility rate, and we have to think a little. We have to think a little. The old people of tomorrow will be very different from the old people of yesterday and even today. Why? Because the old people of tomorrow will be better educated. They would have, growing up because of the affluent society, they would have had better nutrition, better food to eat. They would be in better health. They would be able to work longer, and so these are some of the things that need to be taken into consideration when we talk about the immigration problem, right? And I don't think that the government has appropriately addressed this particular issue. That the older people who will be stronger, more intellectual, in the sense that they have had more years of education, they'll be able to work longer. So with that in mind, do we really need, how can we calibrate or recalibrate the immigration? And I mean, we don't have an old age retirement pension scheme, right? We are all dependent on our CPF. So there has to be a better calibration of the immigration question. Yeah.
Okay, moving forward, SG50 celebrations have been all over the news this year, but the celebrations have also prompted soul searching in some of us.
Sure.
So just to ask, what are some of your hopes and aspirations for the next 50 years? What would you like to see in Singapore when we celebrate SG100?
Well, let's talk about SG50. I'm happy that we have reached this millennium, 50 years. I can only identify myself as a Singaporean. I'm a fourth generation Singaporean. I don't have my stake anywhere else, and I may have worked in the US and Canada and so on and so forth, but this is my country, this is where my family is, and my relatives are here, my friends are here, my stake is here. I can't go migrate to India or China or the US or anywhere else. This is where I am. And so I am proud that we have reached this milestone, 50 years. I hope we can go forward another 50 years. This is one comment a resident recently said to me in one of my walkabouts. He said that he showed me an envelope with the SG50 celebration on it, and one of the pictures on that envelope was this boy kicking the football, and said that why is this here? There used to be a empty patch just behind my block where my children used to go and kick the football around. Now that empty patch is gone. In its place, is a new HDB flat that has come up. So going forward, that's a very big challenge. What kind of Singapore do we want? And I did speak about it recently. I said that I live in Sembawang, and in Canberra they're building a park. 2 years ago, they said that they were going to upgrade that park and bring in better equipment and better swings and all that for the benefit of residents and so on and so forth. So I was quite excited. Wow, very good. Let's go and enjoy some of these facilities that are being put up there. Do I need to stop that or what?
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. But soon after came another announcement that there are going to be more flatted factories built around here. More HDB flats that are going to be built here, and so on and so forth. So which would mean that the park, which is enjoyed by a relatively smaller group of people, will now cater to a bigger group of people, and surrounding that park is going to become, there are going to be executive condominiums and so on and so forth. So what is the impact on the quality of life for Singaporeans? That's a very big question that I think all Singaporeans are concerned about, because we all know that the more people there are, it will mean that there are that much lesser opportunities for Singaporeans. What's the privilege of being Singaporean?
I get your point, Mr. Philemon. So final two questions. Live like a legend. So that's one of your taglines that you constantly use. Can you tell us why live like a legend?
I think it's important to live life the way your heart tells you to live it. And when you die without any regrets. When I felt that when I felt that it was time to go to the US, it was not an easy decision, but we did it anyway. We packed 4 bags and we went there. We didn't have a proper house or anything like that. We just went because our heart told us to do it. And when we came back, we knew that the time there was up. We came back to Singapore. We packed 4 bags again and came back to Singapore. So I think that for me, it's important that you live a life where you can inspire others, where you can touch other people's life. You do the things that you like doing. You benefit society as you are living your life. And when you die, when it's time to go, you have the satisfaction that you have lived a full life.
So lastly, why should people support you and why should people support SPP?
I think people should support me because I'm right smack in the middle. I'm not very rich. I'm not an academic. Neither am I an illiterate. I'm right smack in the middle. I can understand the issues and the challenges the people in the middle face. I myself face some of these challenges with cost of living, transportation, and so on. I mean, in the month of July, when there was a severe MRT breakdown, my wife left work at 6 p.m. and she reached home at 11 p.m. So I face the same challenges that people in the middle face. So I will be a good advocate for them on issues like that. And also, if elected, I intend to be a full-time member of Parliament. Some of the feedback that we have gotten is that because the Hong Kah North constituency is so big, the member of Parliament there are challenges in meeting their current member of Parliament. So to the voters in Hong Kah North, I would like to assure them that they will see me more often. I'll be a full-time MP. Well, I'm already doing a lot of the things like speaking up, being active, helping those that are in need, and so on and so forth, without drawing $1 million salary like what some senior ministers of state are doing. So the residents of Hong Kah North can be assured that if elected, that I will work very, very hard, and I'll work very hard for the voters in Hong Kah North. And why SPP? Because with the charms, why SPP? Because with the charms, there is a legacy of about 30 years where he has run his town council well. When he handed over the town council to when he lost, he handed it in with a good surplus. The residents in Potong Pasir say that even when they call the town council at 10 p.m, someone will come within like half an hour to attend to them. So they did lift upgrading of about 30 lifts in Potong Pasir, where the residents then had to co-pay, unlike the lift upgrading program. So there is a legacy of running the town council well. There's a legacy of speaking up in Parliament. There was a period of time where Mr. Cham Siew Tong was the only opposition MP in Parliament at that time, and at that time he was the conscience of the nation. And that is a tradition and a legacy that I will try to follow and upkeep. And so that's why people should vote for SPP, the legacy of the charms, and for me, because I intend to keep that good tradition going. Well, you may have heard the bark at the end, and this is the reason for the bark. We adopted him from the shelter. I think what, 6-7 years ago?
Yeah.
About
5 years.
About 5 years ago.
Much longer.
Yeah. It feels much longer. He's been a part of my family since then. Yeah. And I think he's happy to be here.
All right.
His name is Max. Hey Max.